You know the feeling. You sit quietly while everyone around you is scrambling, posting, optimizing, performing. You have goals, you have vision, but you refuse to participate in the frantic theater of modern productivity. You conserve your energy. You observe before you act. You choose depth over noise, stillness over spectacle. And yet, the world looks at you and calls you lazy. Why? Why does society fear the man who appears ambitious but moves slowly? Why does your refusal to chase validation make managers uncomfortable, friends anxious, and algorithms indifferent? Because you've accidentally touched a nerve that runs straight through the center of modern civilization. The unspoken demand that worth equals motion, that silence equals surrender, that stillness is failure. But what if your stillness isn't weakness? What if it's the most accurate reading of reality available? You're not broken. You're not behind. You're operating on a different operating system, one that recognizes a brutal, centuries-old truth. Endless striving doesn't lead to fulfillment. It leads to exhaustion, disguised as progress. The world tells you to grind, to hustle, to never stop. And when you pause to ask what for, they panic, because your pause threatens the illusion. In this video, I'm going to show you why society fears the lazy, ambitious man. Not through self-help platitudes, not through motivational noise, through Arthur Schopenhauer. Because over 180 years ago, he diagnosed exactly why your quiet refusal to play the game is the only rational response to a world built on blind wanting. And once you understand the mechanism, you won't apologize for your pace. You'll weaponize it. Chapter 1. The Pendulum of Endless Wanting. You felt it. You land the job you spent months chasing. For 3 days, you feel it. The pride, the relief, the high. Then what? The email pings. The expectations shift. The novelty decays. You're already scanning the next milestone before the first one has settled into your bones. This isn't a personal flaw. It's biology dressed up as destiny. Modern psychology calls it hedonic adaptation, the brain's ruthless tendency to normalize pleasure, resetting your baseline to 0 within weeks. You were never built to be satisfied. You were built to want. And wanting, as Schopenhauer observed, is suffering. He wrote, "Life swings like a pendulum, backward and forward, between pain and boredom." Read that again. Not frustration, not temporary setbacks. Pain, boredom, the two poles of human existence. When you strive, you feel lack. That's the pain pole. When you achieve, you feel empty. That's the boredom pole. The lazy, ambitious man recognizes this cycle early. He refuses to run the treadmill because he sees the belt moving faster than his feet. He understands that the modern promise of hustle until you make it is a mathematical trap. You don't reach the finish line. The finish line just moves. Look at your own habits. How many times have you poured your energy into a project, a relationship, a certification, only to realize the reward was just another doorway to more demands? The brain's dopamine system doesn't reward completion. It rewards pursuit. That's why scrolling feels like research. That's why busy work feels like progress. You're caught in a feedback loop engineered by evolution and exploited by industry. Society doesn't fear your laziness. It fears your awareness of the loop. because once you see it, you can't be milkled by it anymore. Schopenhauer didn't preach despair. He preached clarity. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. When you stop performing busyness, you stop forfeiting yourself. You stop trading your nervous system for social approval. You begin the only work that actually matters: conserving your attention, protecting your cognitive bandwidth, and directing it only toward what aligns with your architecture. The pendulum will always swing, but you don't have to be the weight. Chapter 2. Why your stillness threatens the herd. You've seen it in meetings, in group chats, at dinners where someone inevitably asks, "So, what's your 5-year plan?" You give a measured answer. You don't overshare. You don't inflate your trajectory. You let the silence linger, and you watch the discomfort ripple through the room. Why? Because stillness breaks the social contract of performative striving. The herd relies on visible motion to validate its own motion. When you opt out, even quietly, you become a mirror, and mirrors make people squirm. Modern psychology confirms it through social identity theory. Groups maintain cohesion by punishing deviation. The Dunning-Kruger effect amplifies this. The loudest voices are often the least aware of their own limitations. They compensate with volume.
You refuse to confuse activity with achievement. And to the chronically insecure, your patience looks like arrogance. Your quiet ambition looks like laziness. But it's not. It's precision. Think about the last time you declined an invitation to a networking event, or skipped a status update because the progress wasn't ready for public eyes, or chose deep work over shallow collaboration. You felt it, the social friction, the subtle judgment, the unspoken question, "Are you serious?" But seriousness isn't measured in calendar density. It's measured in cognitive depth. Schopenhauer understood this when he wrote, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." The people who fear your stillness are projecting their own panic onto your silence. They can't imagine a life not governed by external validation, so they assume you're broken. They're not. They're just trapped in a smaller room. The lazy, ambitious man doesn't fight the herd. He observes it. He knows that conformity is the tax you pay for mediocrity. He knows that the intelligent few don't broadcast their plans. They execute in silence. He knows that when you stop competing for attention, you finally gain clarity. And clarity is terrifying to anyone who survives on noise. Your refusal to participate isn't rejection of ambition, it's elevation of it. You're not lazy, you're selective. And selection requires the courage to stand still while everyone else runs. Chapter 3. The Trap of Productive Misery. Let's dissect the myth that keeps you chained to the grind. The modern self-help industry sells you a lie wrapped in productivity jargon. If you just wake up earlier, optimize your routines, track your habits, and stack more hours, you'll finally arrive. But arrive where? At what cost? The system doesn't want you fulfilled. It wants you functional. It wants you exhausted enough to buy the next book, download the next app, attend the next summit. You're not building a life, you're fueling an economy. This is where mainstream advice collapses under its own weight. Psychology calls it the treadmill effect. The harder you run, the faster the belt moves. You don't escape burnout,
you normalize it. You celebrate 14-hour days like medals. You wear exhaustion as identity. Schopenhauer saw this centuries before it had a name. To desire and to strive is the fundamental condition of our being. But he didn't say it as a compliment. He said it as a diagnosis. The will, your blind, ceaseless drive, doesn't care about your well-being. It only cares about continuation. And modern culture has weaponized it, turning biological impulse into moral virtue. Why do the most productive people often feel the emptiest? Because productivity without purpose is just sophisticated suffering. You've optimized your calendar, but lost your center. You've hacked your sleep, but forgotten how to rest. You've chased efficiency, but abandoned meaning. Schopenhauer asked the uncomfortable question we still avoid. What if the goal isn't the destination? What if the goal is the suffering itself, disguised as progress? When you finally stop running long enough to listen, you hear it. The quiet hum of a system designed to keep you wanting, never satisfied. The lazy, ambitious man refuses to feed the machine. He doesn't reject hard work. He rejects meaningless motion. He knows that not all effort creates value. Not all motion creates momentum. Not all success creates peace. He watches the hustle gurus preach 5 a.m. routines while ignoring nervous system collapse. He sees the LinkedIn optimists glorifying overwork while hiding therapy bills. And he chooses a different path: strategic conservation, deliberate pause, ruthless elimination of the non-essential. It's not apathy, it's arithmetic. You cannot pour from a depleted vessel and call it abundance. You must first stop the leak. Chapter 4. The Neurology of Voluntary Stillness. Let's pull back the curtain on what's actually happening in your nervous system when you choose stillness. Modern neuroscience has mapped what Schopenhauer described philosophically: the war between the will and the intellect. The will is your limbic system. It's dopamine-driven, reactive, survival-oriented. It screams, do more, chase it, secure it, now. The intellect is your prefrontal cortex. It's slow, analytical, future-oriented. It asks, is this necessary? What's the cost? Does this align? When you force constant output, you starve the intellect and feed the will. The result isn't peak performance, it's chronic cognitive overload. Think about your brain like a battery with a faulty charger. You're draining it with shallow tasks, context switching, social performance, and digital stimulation. You plug it in, but the charger delivers voltage spikes instead of steady current. The battery degrades. Focus fractures. Creativity dies. You don't need more motivation. You need better energy architecture.
Schopenhauer's laziness is actually what cognitive psychology calls executive function preservation. You're not avoiding work. You're avoiding waste. You're protecting your cognitive bandwidth for the few things that actually matter. This isn't theoretical, it's measurable. Studies on cognitive load show that decision fatigue compounds exponentially when you're forced to perform constant micro-choices. Every notification, every status update, every performative reply. They drain the same neural resources required for deep thinking, strategic planning, and original creation. The lazy, ambitious man doesn't multitask. He single-tasks. He doesn't react. He responds. He doesn't optimize for visibility. He optimizes for impact. And in doing so, he bypasses the neurological trap that keeps the herd exhausted.
Schopenhauer wrote, "The ordinary man is concerned with his interests. The man of intellect is concerned with his thoughts. Your thoughts are your only real property. Guard them." When society labels your selectivity as laziness, it's really confessing its own exhaustion. It can't comprehend a mind that refuses to leak energy. It can't tolerate a nervous system that chooses conservation over combustion. But you know the truth. Stillness isn't empty, it's charged. And when you finally move, you don't sprint, you strike. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Selective Action. So how do you navigate a world that mistakes stillness for stagnation? First, you stop apologizing for your pace. Second, you design your environment to protect your focus. Third, you measure progress by depth, not density. The lazy, ambitious man doesn't abandon ambition. He refines it. He stops casting nets and starts aiming spears. And this requires a complete inversion of mainstream advice. Let's be clear. The internet will tell you to post daily, to network relentlessly, to track every metric, to say yes to everything. That's not a strategy. That's a surrender. What not to do? Don't confuse visibility with value. Don't equate hours with output. Don't let external validation dictate your internal rhythm. Don't optimize your life into a spreadsheet. Don't apologize for needing solitude. These aren't minor missteps. They're structural errors. They keep you trapped in the pendulum. They keep you feeding the will instead of directing the intellect. The intelligent few understand that ambition isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, but better. What to do instead? Schopenhauer's path is ruthless in its simplicity. First, conserve. Protect your attention like a finite resource. Second, select. Choose only the battles that align with your architecture. Third, strike. Execute with precision, then return to stillness. This isn't laziness, this is leverage. You're not avoiding work, you're avoiding waste. You're not rejecting success, you're rejecting counterfeit success. You measure output by resonance, not volume. You judge progress by sustainability, not speed. You know that mastery requires withdrawal before expression. The lazy, ambitious man doesn't burn out because he doesn't burn continuously. He simmers. He observes. He waits for the alignment of energy, purpose, and opportunity. When it arrives, he moves with certainty. When it doesn't, he rests without guilt. He knows that stillness isn't the enemy of progress, it's the incubator of it. And once you internalize this, the world's judgment loses its grip. You stop seeking permission to be strategic. You become the architect of your own rhythm. Chapter 6. So what do you do? So what do you do when you see the machinery, when you understand the pendulum, when you recognize that your quiet ambition isn't a defect, but a defense? You accept it, not passively, not resignedly, but consciously. You stop fighting reality. You start navigating it. Schopenhauer's pessimism isn't a death sentence, it's a liberation. It strips away the illusion that happiness is earned through exhaustion. It reveals that peace is found through alignment, that freedom isn't the absence of constraints, it's the absence of delusion. This isn't depression, this isn't nihilism. Depression is the collapse of meaning. Nihilism is the rejection of it. What you're practicing is neither. You're practicing clarity. You're choosing to see the game without joining it. You're refusing to trade your nervous system for social approval. You're directing your energy inward, where it compounds instead of dissipates. The herd will call you detached. Let them. Detachment is the price of precision. Distance is the foundation of depth. How do you live this? First, you audit your obligations. You cut the performative ones. Second, you schedule silence. You treat rest as infrastructure, not indulgence. Third, you define success on your terms, not theirs. You stop measuring yourself against timelines that don't fit your architecture. You stop comparing your depth to their density.
You understand that the lazy, ambitious man isn't behind. He's just operating on a different frequency. And frequencies don't compete. They resonate. Schopenhauer's final insight isn't bleak, it's freeing. He didn't say life is meaningless. He said meaning isn't found in chasing, it's found in choosing, in conserving, in directing the will instead of being dragged by it. When you stop running from stillness, you stop running from yourself. You stop fearing the quiet. You start using it. And in that shift, you become unshakable. Not because you've conquered the world, but because you've stopped letting it conquer you. The final truth. The lazy, ambitious man is not broken. He is awake. He does not lack drive. He lacks illusion. He does not avoid work. He avoids waste. He does not reject ambition. He refines it. He knows the pendulum swings. He knows the will demands. He knows the herd performs, and he chooses none of it as default. He chooses clarity. He chooses conservation. He chooses direction over density, depth over display, silence over spectacle. Accept it. You were never built for endless motion. You were built for strategic stillness. Accept it. Most people confuse movement with progress. They equate noise with importance. They mistake exhaustion for virtue. Accept it. The system needs you tired so it can keep you compliant. It needs you chasing so it can keep you consuming. It needs you loud so it can keep you predictable. But you don't need any of it. You need alignment. You need clarity. You need the courage to stand still while the world spins. This isn't surrender. This is sovereignty. You don't win by running faster. You win by running smarter. You don't succeed by doing more. You succeed by doing less, but precisely. You don't find peace in the grind. You find it in the gap between the grind. You stop asking for permission to rest. You stop apologizing for selectivity. You stop measuring your worth by your visibility. You measure it by your integrity, by your consistency, by your refusal to leak energy into empty rooms. The lazy, ambitious man doesn't fear the quiet. He trusts it. He doesn't fear the pause. He prepares for it. He doesn't fear the judgment. He outlasts it. And when he finally moves, he doesn't scatter. He strikes, with precision, with purpose, with power. Accept it. You don't need to prove your worth through motion. You prove it through mastery. Accept it. You don't need to join the race. You need to choose your track. Accept it. You are not behind. You are aligned. If this resonated, don't just consume it. Integrate it. Start with 5 minutes of uninterrupted silence daily. Track what your mind defaults to. Observe without judgment.
Protect your attention like the finite resource it is. The tools are simple. The practice is relentless. Write in the comments, "It made sense to me," not to please the algorithm, to anchor your understanding, to declare your alignment. Subscribe if you refuse to confuse motion with progress. Share this with someone who needs permission to stop running. You don't need to hustle to be worthy. You need to choose to be free. The pendulum will keep swinging. You don't have to ride it. Step off. Breathe. Begin.